The clink of her wineglass against the table hit me like a gunshot. Sarah's hand trembled as she set it down, her crimson lipstick smearing the rim like blood on a blade. Across the candlelit dining room, her eyes, once warm, now cold as frost on a winter pane, avoided mine. The divorce papers sat folded beside her plate, crisp and white, an uninvited guest between the roasted lamb and the silence. My fork froze midair, a chunk of meat dangling, as my chest tightened with a dread I couldn't name. "We need to talk," she said, her voice a thin wire stretched to snapping. The dining room smelled of rosemary and betrayal. The oak table, where we'd laughed over late-night takeout and planned our future, now felt like a battlefield. I lowered my fork, the metal cool against my palm, and stared at the papers. Their edges were sharp, precise, as if they'd been waiting to slice through our marriage. My pulse thrummed in my ears, drowning out the soft jazz humming from the speaker in the corner. "What is this?" I asked, though I knew. My voice cracked, raw and unsteady, like a boy caught stealing. Sarah's fingers twitched toward the papers, then retreated to her lap. "It's time, David," she said, her words clipped, rehearsed. "We've been drifting. You know it." Drifting. The word stung, vague yet cruel, like a slap you don't see coming. I wanted to scream that we weren't driftwood, that we'd built something. 15 years, a home, dreams of a child we never had. But her face, pale and resolute, told me she'd already left me somewhere I couldn't follow. I reached for the papers, my hands shaking, not from anger, not yet, but from a hollow ache that felt like falling. The first page was a cold litany of legalese. Dissolution, irreconcilable differences, equitable distribution. My eyes snagged on her signature, bold and looping, as if she'd signed a love letter instead of a death warrant. "When did you decide this?" I asked, my throat dry as ash. The candle flickered, casting shadows that danced like ghosts across her face. "Months ago," she admitted, her gaze flicking to the window, where rain streaked the glass like tears. "I didn't know how to tell you. Months." The word carved into me, sharp and deep. Months of her lying beside me, her breath warm on my neck, while she planned this. I thought of the late nights she'd spent at the office, the phone calls she took in hushed tones, the way her laughter had faded like a song I couldn't recall. Had I missed the signs, or had I chosen not to see them? The room felt smaller, the air thick with the scent of wax and regret. I flipped through the papers, my fingers brushing the ink as if I could erase it. Then I saw it, a clause buried in the fine print, a single line that stopped my heart. "Respondent acknowledges fault in breach of marital fidelity." My breath caught, a jagged thing in my chest. Infidelity. The word was a blade, twisting deeper with every heartbeat. I looked at her, searching for denial, for shame, but her face was a mask unreadable. "Sarah," I said, my voice low, trembling with a fury I hadn't yet earned. "What does this mean?" She didn't answer. Her silence was louder than any confession, filling the space between us with truths I wasn't ready to face. I thought of the coworker she'd mentioned too often, Mark, with his easy smile and late-night texts she'd dismissed as work. I thought of the perfume on her coat, a scent I didn't recognize, and the way she'd started locking her phone. Small things, rationalized away, now roared to life like a fire I'd ignored. I stood, the chair scraping against the hardwood, a sound that echoed like a scream. "Say it," I demanded, my voice breaking. "Tell me." Her lips parted, but no words came. Instead, she reached for her wine, her hand steady now, as if the act of drinking could wash away the guilt. The room spun, the walls closing in, and I saw our life in fragments. Her hand in mine at our wedding, the way she'd cried when we lost the baby, the quiet mornings when we'd read together in bed. Had it all been a lie? "I didn't mean for it to happen," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "It was a mistake. A moment. A moment." The word was a punch, stealing my breath. A moment that shattered everything. I wanted to ask who, when, where, but the details felt like poison I couldn't swallow. My hands clenched, nails biting into my palms, and I wondered if I was angry at her or at myself for believing we were unbreakable. The doorbell rang, sharp and jarring, cutting through the haze. Sarah flinched, her eyes darting to the door. "That's the lawyer," she said, her voice faltering. "I asked him to come." A lawyer. At our dinner table. The audacity of it burned, but I nodded, numb, as if I were watching someone else's life unravel. I opened the door, and there he was, Mark, her coworker, in a crisp suit, his face a mix of pity and professionalism. My stomach lurched, the truth clicking into place like a lock I couldn't unpick. "David," Mark said, his voice smooth, practiced. "I'm here to go over the terms." He stepped inside, his briefcase a guillotine in his hand. Sarah wouldn't meet my eyes, her fingers twisting the napkin in her lap. The air was thick, suffocating, as Mark sat at the table, oblivious to the wreckage he'd caused. Or maybe he wasn't. Maybe he'd known all along. I slid the papers toward him, my voice steady despite the storm inside. "Read the clause," I said, pointing to the line about her affair. Out loud. Sarah's head snapped up, her eyes wide with panic. Mark hesitated, his jaw tightening, but I held his gaze, daring him to refuse. The room was silent, save for the rain's relentless drum against the windows. He cleared his throat and read, his voice clinical. "Respondent acknowledges fault in breach of marital fidelity." The words hung in the air, heavy, undeniable. Sarah's face crumpled, a sob escaping her lips, and for a moment, I saw the woman I'd loved, vulnerable, human, broken. But the moment passed, and all I felt was the weight of her betrayal, cold and unyielding. Mark closed the papers, his hands steady, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of guilt. "David," he started, but I cut him off. "Don't," I said, my voice a blade. "You don't get to speak here." I turned to Sarah, my heart a tangle of love and rage. "You brought him here. To our home. To end us." She didn't answer, her tears falling silently, staining the tablecloth. I wanted to hate her, to hate them both, but all I felt was loss, a hollow, aching void where our life used to be. I signed the papers, my hand shaking, the pen scratch a final note in our story. "Take them," I said, shoving them toward Mark. "And get out." He left without a word, the door closing softly behind him. Sarah stayed, her sobs the only sound in the room, but I couldn't look at her. The rain fell harder, blurring the world outside, and I wondered if I'd ever trust again, or if I'd spend my life searching for the pieces of myself she'd taken.